Heyo, busy brain. Welcome to the Busy Brained Saint podcast, where faith meets focus. I'm Camden Hainsworth, an expert ADHD coach, here to help you understand your mind with confidence. God knows your brain perfectly, so let's explore that divine design together and discover just how fulfilling your life can be, living with God and ADHD. Hey, ADHDer, I'm so grateful that you have chosen this podcast today. Thanks for being here. You've probably had these moments in your life where the same ADHD situation continuously creeps up. And no matter how many different angles you go about trying to conquer this symptom or this struggle, it just seems to be failure time and time again. Sometimes what you just need is a second view, a different view, a non-biased view. There's a really common phrase in the coaching world that says you can't see the outside of the label from inside of the bottle. And that's precisely what ADHD coaching does, is it allows me, as somebody who understands the ADHD brain, who's really got an attuned ear to help people, I can listen to your situation, listen to your struggle, and hear it in a different way. And I'd love to be able to do that for you. I have 20-minute free coaching sessions. I call them my mini sessions. And if you don't know if a whole coaching package is exactly what you want to sign up for, or if you are interested in learning more about my coaching, these free mini sessions are there for you. So highly recommend CamdenADHDcoaching.com, and you'll click on mini session, and then we can get together. And just in that 20 minutes or so, I promise I'm going to send you a whole different perspective on how to approach this. I know that I've at least helped you in some way to get a hold of yourself with ADHD. So once again, CamdenADHDcoaching.com, click on free mini session, and I hope to see you very, very soon. Now back into the podcast. Hello, I'm so happy that you are here. My brain is busy and my heart is full. Today is a very special, wonderful episode, of course, and we're here with Rachel. Rachel is the podcast host of the 3 and 30 podcast. So if you are a mom listening and you're about my age, you've probably been listening to her for like 10 years now. How long have you had your podcast, Rachel?
I was going to say not 10 years because it's been 8.5 years that I've been doing it. So no one's been listening to it for 10 years, maybe 8.5.
About a decade, almost a decade. It sounds so much cooler when we say that.
I know. And I've been rounding up lately saying 9 years, but I'm like, really, it's not 9 years till October. So
we're just so lucky and grateful to have you on this podcast. My sister follows your podcast like religiously. She loves how you break it down into 3 different pieces. It's very digestible. And so my whole motherhood, I've been a mom for 13 years, but I swear she's just been sending me your podcast over and over again. And then I was super surprised and very excited to hear that you had mentioned your ADHD diagnosis recently. And so was she. She kind of runs the back end a little bit of my business here. And so we're like, all right, we got to reach out and see if we can make this happen. So I'm really grateful and happy to have you with us today.
Well, thank you. I'm interested to hear if she, as a religious listener of my podcast, wondered or if there were signs to her. Because for years I've talked about how hard systems are for me and how busy my brain is and how I'm a scattered mom, all these things that when I got an official diagnosis, some of my friends were like, well, yeah, like that was obvious
Checks
a long time ago.
Yeah.
So anyway.
No, she never mentioned it to me. I think that we find ourselves in these positions, though, in our businesses, creating something that's working for us and we want to share it because all of a sudden, oh, that system actually did help, or that philosophy really helped, and it was more basic and simple and maybe a little bit different than what most people have integrated. And I love it when we find ourselves in our passion place that also serves us in our brain. So,
for sure.
Well, talk to us a little bit about your diagnosis and how that all happened.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, now that I know that I have ADHD, when I look back, it's obvious to me. But growing up in the 80s and 90s, girls weren't diagnosed with ADHD as often. And certainly unless they were exhibiting the typical hyperactivity, sort of bouncing off the walls, those kids got diagnosed with ADHD, but the rest of us did not. And looking back, I'm like, I've always been, scattered, forgetful. My parents called me the absent-minded professor because I was very smart, but like couldn't keep track of things, and just a lot of anxiety and perfectionism that I think was tied up in wanting to figure out how to do things the way that I saw other people doing them, but my brain wasn't really working for me the way I wanted it to. And so I had a lot of shame around that and just a lot of negative self-talk around, get it together, Rachel. Why can't you manage your life? That type of thing all through my teen years. I could manage to get straight A's, but that's because school was my area of hyperfocus. I loved learning. I wanted to achieve. So I would study for a test for 8 hours,
Right.
So I think I could manage with my ADHD symptoms until I became a mom. And that's when things sort of started to fall apart, where it wasn't just me that I was in charge of anymore, and so that's when things became way more obvious to me that there were those deficits, but I still wouldn't have called it or known that it was ADHD. But I went from a career that I loved. I was a high school English teacher, to staying home full time. And that transition was so painful for me, even though I thought it was what I wanted.
Yeah.
Looking back, I'm like, I literally took my passion project, my talents, the things I was good at, and substituted them for trying to build systems and routines and all of these care tasks that are the exact opposite of any of my gifts. And no wonder I was absolutely miserable. And so mad at myself for being miserable, and thought that it meant there was something wrong with me, or I knew I loved my kids. It wasn't that, but I was like, why can't I just be satisfied being a stay-at-home mom and figuring out how to manage our life well and getting these systems in order? Why is it so hard for me to get dinner on the table every night?
Yeah.
Things that seemed easy for other people. It wasn't until my son got diagnosed with ADHD, which I think is a common story.
It is. Mm-hmm.
As I was reading through all of the literature on ADHD for him, that I realized this describes me too. Even though our ADHD manifests really differently, my son has very impulsive, big emotions, maybe what you would think of as more typical ADHD behaviors. But in reading about ADHD, I realized this might be what I have going on. And that's when I, sought diagnosis and got diagnosed. But that was only probably 2 years ago, and I'm 41. So I've lived most of my life just calling myself scattered and an absent-minded professor, when really it was ADHD all along.
What has that done for you since receiving that diagnosis? What we often say, not an excuse, but an explanation. How has that explained to you, and what has that process been like over the past 2 years?
Yeah, I think it's given me a lot more tenderness and grace for my weak areas. I will say that I had already done a lot of that work prior to getting a diagnosis. So when my son was born and I was having such a hard time transitioning to that role as a stay-at-home mom, I started to exhibit a lot of eating disorder behaviors, which actually was a recurrence of eating disorder behaviors that had happened in my 20s, which, by the way, eating disorders are more common for people with ADHD.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
And in my 20s, it had been really restrictive eating. And then when I became a mom and was home with this baby and was so unhappy, it was more binge eating and even some purging and things like that. And so I went to therapy for that. And one of the biggest things that we worked on in my eating disorder therapy was my inner voice and tools to have a kinder inner voice and to stop being so mean to myself, which would then lead to, these disordered eating behaviors when I was being so cruel to myself. And so that had been in the decade leading up to my ADHD diagnosis. I'd already done so much work on accepting myself, on having a kind inner voice.
Yeah.
And so it almost feels like when I got the ADHD diagnosis, I was like, oh, this makes sense. And now I just have even more of a reason to be gentle with myself.
Yeah.
I'd already been doing that work.
Perfect. Yeah.
I can just laugh more easily when I do ridiculous things. And it's been really great too to have that common language with my son, because I think that my son sort of felt a little broken when he was like, when we were getting him
And
tested
how
and
old, can I
diagnosed.
ask how old he was when he got diagnosed and how old you were at that point? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, he was in 5th grade when he got
Okay. Yeah.
diagnosed. And that's when I started wondering, because he's 14 now. So
Okay.
he was what, 10 when he got
Sure.
diagnosed?
10 or 11. Mhm.
That's when I started wondering about my own diagnosis, but I then didn't take action on actually getting diagnosed for a couple more years. But he was 10 then. And now that we know we both have it, we can like laugh about it or be like, oh, the ADHD is coming out. Like, I think it makes him feel less alone in that whole experience. I don't know if you follow the Holdernesses.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
their book's right up there.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
the book.
Mhm.
And like, I read that book, ADHD is Awesome, aloud to Noah. And we were just laughing about our crazy brains. And they sing a song, Penn sings like a parody song, You Might Have ADHD.
Yeah.
And it's like all of the ridiculous, like him leaving his computer outside by a tree. You might have
Yeah.
ADHD. And now, whenever my son and I do something like, dumb,
Uh-huh.
essentially,
Yeah.
like we'll just like, I'll sing, You Might Have ADHD. And we just kind
Makes
of
it more
laugh.
lighthearted.
And it's just made it so much more light. And like, we don't need to be so mean to ourselves and beat up on ourselves about all the silly things we do. I actually just went and watched my sister's 4 kids for almost a week while she and her husband were on a trip.
Oh, that's amazing.
And on the last day, I was like, man, I've been awesome following the routines and keeping it all together. Like, my executive functioning has been really impressive this week. I even remembered to leave her keys on the counter before I left because I was afraid,
Yeah,
because
you would bring them.
once the
then they
kids were
wouldn't- Yeah.
yes, exactly. Once the kids were at school, I left, and then my sister, like, we didn't intercept for a few hours there. I'm like, I can't believe I remembered to take those keys out and put them on the counter before I left. So I'm on the airplane, and she texts me, and she's like, you left your keys on the counter and took my keys with you.
I could have almost called that. It was the first thought that came to my head. I'm like, she's proud of it. It had to be someone's keys. It's totally her. And ask me why.
I know. And
I just totally, I'm here with you.
Oh,
Yeah,
exactly.
1000%.
And just the fact
Oh,
that I
man.
could take keys out of my purse and not notice.
Intentionally.
Like, that I drive a VW. She drives a Honda. Like, the keys don't look the same,
I love it.
but I don't have that attention to detail. Like, I'm like, keys going on the counter.
Yes.
And
Look
I'm
at
just,
me. Good job.
So we were just, I know. So we
Oh,
were laughing
man.
about, like,
What'd you do? Just have to send
there's
them
always
back?
got to be something. Yes. So we just swapped. We just did a little exchange, but classic ADHD.
Reunited
But
them.
I think
Oh, man.
I'm lucky that I was raised in a home where my parents always sort of had that attitude. Like, they never made me feel bad for the silly things.
Were
that
they
I would
neurodivergent
do.
at all? Do you think that either of them have ADHD?
I doubt it.
You
But
didn't
just
see it the
based
same way.
on. But my mom passed away when I was a teenager, so there could be that, like, I just didn't know. But because my older sister has ADHD too,
Yeah.
and I know it is highly
Heritable,
genetic, so
yeah.
it's like it's someone in our family. But anyway, I
Oh,
was
that's
definitely
cool.
the most. My older sister was more hyperactive,
Uh-huh.
but also not diagnosed until adulthood.
Okay.
And I was more absent-minded.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so we
that's
kind
perfect.
of-
Yeah.
kind of
Knowing that
manifest different.
spectrum and seeing everything in between, plus your son, it's just really helpful to start to understand. I would say we got to get to know your flavor. You got to get to know your flavor of ADHD. Like, we have these brains that don't work in what society would call a typical fashion, but it's still equally unique for each person. And I love hearing how all of your past work with mental health really prepared you for this diagnosis. And now you're like, excellent, even more compassion. And it highlights to me, for some people, ADHD is the starting place. For some part, it's just another chapter of their journey. And I wonder if we could really see all of the things that we have working for us or against us or whatever it might be, truly how we would talk to ourselves. What that would change, the things that we know currently, the things that we don't know currently, and understanding that there are elements of our life that are still unknown to us, and that we still deserve grace and mercy and kindness and encouragement. And if we could only see, it's like that whole element. I love that. Thank you for sharing. It's really weird. We have like parallel lives in so many ways. I'm 42. I was a school teacher, went through infertility, adopted, came home, was very dissatisfied with my life, found entrepreneurship. My brain started to work better, found out about ADHD, and now that's what I advocate for. So it's really fun to see other people in this sphere. And I'm not going to sit here and say that it's easy. It's not easy. And it's so much more enlightening when we just have a little bit more understanding, passion for ourselves.
And wow, that we are very similar, especially when you add in the adoption piece. I feel like a lot of people might have a similar story to us, but then when you add that in, it's like that is unique that we both have that in common.
It is. So, I don't think that it's bad to maybe highlight right here. I think it's great to highlight that within even the adoption community, ADHD is very, very high.
Yes.
And there's a multitude of reasons that we could talk about that. Do you have any insights? Maybe I could just ask you that question. Is there any insights that you want to bring to this conversation today about adoption and ADHD?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that part of the reason why ADHD might be more common in the adoption community is because people who have ADHD are more likely to get pregnant in situations where they can't support a baby. And research has shown that like teen pregnancy is higher in people with ADHD. So, and that was the case with our son. His birth mom was 16 when she got pregnant with him. And though she was never officially diagnosed with ADHD, everything I have ever learned about ADHD makes me strongly believe that she also had ADHD. The impulsivity and all of the signs are there. She passed away, so that's something that we won't ever really know about her story, but just based on what I know. And so then obviously her son is more likely to have ADHD. So that's like a totally unrelated. I mean, like I am not a researcher, but I have heard that research about teen pregnancy.
Impulsivity alone, think of just like the impulsive nature. We're very present focused, especially in particular flavors of ADHD as well. That can become even stronger, which is my daughter. My daughter is about your son's age actually too, which is great. And she is more of the impulsive, hyperactive type of ADHD. And I know her birth mom, and I love her birth mom. We have an open adoption, and I knew her even before we adopted my daughter. And that's the one thing I loved about her. I mean, I love a lot of things about her, but how fun and goofy and spontaneous and impulsive.
Adventurous.
Oh man, she was just so fun to listen to in a conversation. She's so witty and quick. But also this was one of the consequences of that. And she'll, fully admit to that too. So another really interesting side idea, and this isn't to ever point to a negative side of birth parents by any means, it's just once again a study, is that in your utero, cortisol levels are super high. And so oftentimes if a birth mom is stressed out because of this unplanned pregnancy and she's trying to make this decision about placing or keeping her baby in her home or, whatever it might be, plus maybe some relationships with birth parents or birth father, whatever it might be. That those cortisol levels are really high. And in utero, a lot of the time that baby is on guard. It's coming out like, okay, we're going to have to be really on guard here. And so there's just a variety of different studies that are kind of pointing to why this might be the case it is. And that's never to blame. That's never to put it out there, but to understand, right? To help us have more compassion for everyone involved, on ourselves as parents, because sometimes that's a whole wonky thing, is parenting an ADHD with an ADHDer. And then just to highlight the complexities of adoption.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and the other thing is, depending on when you adopt the child, like I adopted my son at birth. I was in the delivery room when he was born, which was so beautiful.
We were in the waiting room, so we could hear. But
so right
it's
there,
amazing.
right?
You were right
but
there. Wow.
Yeah. which was so gracious of Katie. But newborn babies being separated from their biological mom, which in some cases has to happen and is the right thing, their nervous system is regulated by the sound of their biological mom's
That's
heartbeat
right.
and breathing and smell and all of those things. And so I think I struggled to accept that in the beginning, that maybe Noah had a more active nervous system because he was separated from his biological mom. I mean, we did spend a few days in the hospital with them, and we have an open adoption with them, so she saw Noah often, but I didn't want to accept when he was a tiny baby that maybe that was part of the reason why he was dysregulated, was because he didn't have his biological mom's all of those things, all of the smells and sounds and all of that. But now with a little more maturity, I'm like, of course that impacts a newborn baby. Like, and that's nothing personal.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it wasn't the right choice, or that I'm not his mom, or that, any of it was wrong. It just is. And so it makes sense that he may have a more heightened nervous system, throughout his life because of some of the things that happened when he was in utero and right after. And we can work with that. Like, there's so much we can do to work with that. And he has wonderful relationships with both of his birth families. As I mentioned, his birth mom passed away, but he still has a really close connection with his birth dad. And all of those things are going to help him regulate his nervous system and gain some of those executive functioning skills and things as he grows. Another thing that's personal to our story is that Katie had really severe mental health issues, which is why she eventually passed away. And I do sometimes wonder and think, like, if we had known more about ADHD at that time, like, depression and anxiety and things like that are way more common in people with ADHD because of all of the messages that they're given their whole lives about how, they can't do anything right. They're a screw up. And she has wonderful parents. So this is nothing against them. I think it's just the society.
Yes.
And I often wonder, like, if we had known more about mental health at that time, about ADHD specifically, would her story have been different? But I'm just so grateful that we have so much more understanding now around the ways that ADHD can manifest, even in girls, even in really smart girls, which she was, and so I'm so glad for how far we've come with the research in this area.
I remember we had a sound machine in Brielle's bedroom growing up, and we usually put it on the ocean sounds, but one of the times it flipped over to the heartbeat sound, and very, very, very early on. And she went from screaming to complete peace. This is probably her first week or second week. And I remember I appreciate so much that you shared that, because that was really hard for a person who had gone through infertility and done all the things for 6 years, and then to have this baby, and then to have like this thought of, I'm still not enough, right? And then to have an open adoption where I want her to feel like her mom, like her birth mom. Like, I was really trying to honor that. But at that time, I was 30 and our brain's supposed to be fully developed at that point. But I was trying to think, how do I hold the space for the mom, but then wake up every 2 hours and be the mom and not take away from her motherhood. It was really hard for me to hold that I can 100% be her mom, and Kelly can 100% be her birth mom, and me stepping in 100% doesn't diminish her. I just want to talk about that. And we don't have to go any further, but this is such an important conversation. And within the context of ADHD, which a lot of people will be experiencing if they adopt, my own personal nervous system regulation and this mentality of okay, I've been redeemed. I'm finally a mother. I'm going to do this well. I think the word you said was I wasn't mature enough to see that nervous system, wonkiness or dysregulation made sense, but now I can. And I just want to hug that younger version of myself and say, sister, there is so much for you to learn, and there's so much more out there, and you're doing a great job. You can be 100% a mom and still not have the heartbeat that calms your baby. And this
Mhm.
can be hard and this can be good. And so as you're speaking to your son's birth mom and her upbringing and education for birth moms and adoptees and families involved, and just women's mental health in general, especially surrounding ADHD, there's so much more to this conversation that I think we need to get out there. And I appreciate you so much being so honest about that. It's not anything I've directly talked about in my podcast up to this point, and we've got a lot of episodes now. It means a great deal.
Well, thank you. I know it's very sensitive and complicated.
Hmm.
I think before I adopted, I just didn't understand how complicated. And
No.
I mean, it's just very, very complicated. Since adopting, I've wondered about like the ethics of adoption and like teenage
Mm-hmm.
girls making such a big
Choice,
decision
yeah.
and, all of those things that I was naive. And, but I do think that all of that can be true. And it can also be true that I'm an amazing mom to my son.
Yeah.
And that he has a beautiful, amazing life, that we are so lucky to have him, that the decision that Katie and Drew made was truly selfless and also a huge loss for my son.
Yeah.
And like all of that can be true all at the same time, And I think
Yes.
that the more that we hold all of that and refuse to just default to one rosy narrative of adoption that's too simplified,
It's not
I
real.
think
Yeah.
we're afraid to acknowledge the hard parts because we think it will diminish the beautiful
That's
parts.
right.
But I actually think that acknowledging the hard parts makes even more room for the beautiful parts, to say like, this is messy and humans are complicated and there were probably some mistakes made along the way. And we have this awesome now teenager, my son, who is happy and thriving and connected to so many people who love him. And that's the beauty of open adoption. Open adoption was so hard to figure out how to navigate in the beginning, but I'm so glad that we did the work to do that, because now he has so many more people than, his birth dad was just here last weekend and they snowboard together once a year.
Oh,
And
that's
I
so
was just
cool.
thinking, and he comes for his birthday too. So he comes about twice a year. He's just amazing. He
Oh,
really is.
wow.
And I was just thinking, how many people have their 14-year-old son has like another mentor
Yeah.
who's not their dad, who's not their grandpa, but like loves them just as much, that can sort of mentor them and be there for them. And if Noah's like being kind of mean to his little sister, Drew will be like, hey, that's not cool. And like kind of like he's never trying to
Correct.
father
Yeah.
him. He's just trying to
Redirect.
like, he's a cool older brother. I mean,
Wow.
he was 18 when Noah was born. So he's like a cool uncle or a
Mhm.
cool older brother. And I'm just so grateful that Noah has that mentorship in his life. And I think I'm just less afraid of the complicated emotions of adoption anymore. I've told Noah, like, whatever you feel about your adoption is
That's great.
100% fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
It's
if
real. It's just real. It's honest.
real.
Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't have to be afraid of like talking to me about any of it. If he ever feels like sad that he was placed for adoption or wondering what his life would have been like if he hadn't been adopted, like it's fine for him to feel all of that. And I think the more that we're open to that, like I said, the more beautiful the experience actually is.
Yeah. And when we're dealing with what's actually true, then we can navigate life a lot more easily, more directly, I suppose. When we're trying to pretend and live in these fantasy worlds that are really not real, then it's just going to snowball with the drama, that happens. My daughter knows like her whole birth family on her maternal side, but really doesn't know anyone on her paternal side. And that attachment that we are talking about before is so important, to gain attachment with your adoptive family and to find attachment in your biological family. And in terms of regulation, nervous system regulation, that often is a little bit wonky with the ADHD brain, the more honest we can be about the situation, the more attachment is actually going to be able to happen and be healing and helpful. Because as these teenagers grow, as these people grow, it's not that their ADHD goes away, but how can we support the ADHD? Let's bring love, support, attachment as much as possible. My daughter just did a family history project for her history class, which was a little bit triggering, but it was really cool to be in a place where I could be so settled about my role as her mom and my husband as her dad that she said, I don't want to do any of your guys' family. I want to do my biological lines. And we're like, great. Go for it,
Totally.
Like if I have to convince myself that I'm her mom at this point, then that's on me. It has nothing to do with her. What is she doing? She's exploring, she's being honest with herself and what she needs to honor. And I'm like, that is fantastic. And it sounds like that you did so much work to get to this point, and I, whatever repair I've had to do to get myself to this point and the work that I've had to do, people listening, it really is worth it. And I don't think you can ever be prepared. You can never, just like any mom getting a baby, you're never fully prepared. Any parent getting a baby, you're never fully prepared. And the work that you can put into it is just well worth it.
Well, and it's no wonder that I was struggling so hard in early motherhood, right?
Yes.
Not only did I have all
ADHD. The stories. We call them the dark days over here, which is sad.
The
but
dark days.
Yeah, because I had a baby, biological baby, right afterwards. So they're a year minus a day apart. So it was bonkers. Anyway, please continue.
That's bonkers. Yeah. That is bonkers.
So please continue. The dark
days. Yeah. I'm not only was I transitioning from this career that I loved that really matched my gifts to this new setting that did not match my gifts. Then add on to that, I had undiagnosed ADHD, and I was navigating open adoption and figuring out all of my emotions around that. And my son was really colicky. You add all of that together.
Me too. How weird. Okay, that's so nuts.
And I feel like now, 14 years later, I can sound so evolved that I'm all of the emotions are welcome, and it's all the complication makes it beautiful and all that. But let me tell you, in those early years, it was hard to figure all of that out. And actually, the first person who ever pointed out to me that Noah's colic and his nervous system dysregulation might have something to do with his adoption was an online troll. So that wasn't awesome. And
you should know this better, blah, 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 right?
Yeah, I had had a public facing blog at the time where I was sharing a lot of my joy of having this new baby, and I opened up a little bit about how he was colicky. And I was nervous to even admit that, because you're supposed to love every moment. And then some anonymous person says, well, of course he does. You took him away from his real mom. And I just remember reading that comment and just my heart shattering. I had never considered that was part of it. And of course it was part of it, but just the delivery of that was so cruel.
Yes.
And so
you could change it. You did something wrong, but you should be grateful or be not overstimulated by a baby crying all day long, and even deny that this is still hard, right?
Even that took him away from
the language, the verbiage.
His mom made this decision herself. I was very careful through the whole process. Yeah. I was never manipulative or coercive or, and I've really had to look back at that experience because, of Katie's passing and what was my role in that whole thing? And were we manipulative and and I'm no, absolutely not. I've really come to peace with that all we ever did was try to support Katie and love her. And so I'm that troll does not know what they're talking about. And also I need to have the emotional maturity to be open to the fact that, actually it makes sense that if this baby is not with their biological mom, they might have some nervous system deregulation. But that took time for me to be able to even hear that, and accept
Well, especially when you're in the throes of it, right? You're having to live the being up late and hearing the baby cry, and you're second guessing your decisions, and it might not feel as natural, to get into it. That attachment takes time too with adoption, even the mom to the baby. And then to have to take that on, it just feels so heavy during a time when that wasn't talked about a whole ton either.
No.
Like I said, we're similar in age. So even within the last 10 years, 5 years, how much it's opened up to that. I'd love
Yeah.
to maybe even use that troll to shift into maybe a last conversation together. I just barely started talking about my adoption. My daughter is Black as well online, even though I've been online since 2019 advocating for ADHD because of so many opinions that were out there. And I'm like, I will eventually be able to handle these, but my life is still very, very intense over here because of adoption and because of a lot of other things. And so I had to find my footing before I could come back on and be able to take on the trolls, right? And I feel very good, so much better now. I am so curious. You have such a popular and well listened to and well known podcast. You had a blog. You're a professional. You're a mom with ADHD. If we could maybe pivot into that whole experience, being like front facing publicly, in addition to like being an actual human with ADHD, and how you've navigated your challenges and your strengths with ADHD and just as an incredible human while being in these different roles.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe one of my gifts is that I am sort of unabashedly authentic.
I love
Like,
that. You are a
I
true
just sorta
neurodivergent, man. I
like
I love it.
I am who I
Raw,
am.
raw,
And
raw.
like,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I've been willing to share my heart openly from the beginning. And also, I do think that it comes from being raised by parents that taught me to be secure and like that my weaknesses weren't a personal failing necessarily. They just were, I don't know. So I
Wow,
just
what a
feel like
gift.
it's such a gift. And so I feel like from the beginning, I've been open about, where I fall short and how I'm kind of a hot mess.
Mhm.
And people, I feel like, endeared to me because of that,
Yeah.
because there's no pretense with me. Like people will say like, you are so real. And I'm like, I don't know what that means, but I'll take
What
it.
other lie would
Like,
I be telling you? Yeah, then
I
what's real,
know. I'm
right? Yeah,
like,
cool.
also, that maybe there was just no hiding. Like there was just no way I could possibly hide that I'm a hot mess. And so I didn't
Yeah,
even try,
I love
I don't
it.
know. So I would say I've been very open, like as far as my ADHD quote unquote shortcomings, I've never like really tried to hide those things. I've been very open and vulnerable. And I do think that with the more tender parts of our stories, like adoption, like of course you hold some things closer to
Well,
the
it's not
chest,
your
and you
full
should.
story. Yeah. Yeah,
Yes, you
it's
should.
yeah.
Like I maybe haven't been as open all the time with that story, but I feel like that's good to not share everything. But I've also realized that being willing to acknowledge and share some of the harder parts of adoption, like some of the complicated emotions and like I said, the ethical concerns that I've had with adoption, I wasn't as willing to talk about those things until my son was a little older and I could
Yeah,
see that he was doing okay, like,
totally.
and so I relate to your feeling of like not sharing as much early on. And then sort of, although I will say that Katie passed away when my podcast was like 3 months
Oh
in.
my.
So
Wow.
right at the beginning, and I did share about her and talk about her and the adoption and that she passed away and all of that on my podcast, like the week that she passed away.
Mm.
So
But that's also authentic again. So I'm sure you didn't go into like all the millions of details, but like once again, you showing up as yourself again.
yes, honoring her and also like honoring my grief because we were very close.
My
And
gosh.
I spoke at her funeral.
Oh my
So
goodness.
like I I just feel like I've always tried to be very open with my experiences, and with the exception of very small handful, truly, like 5
Yeah.
comments that have been hurtful over, 15 years of sharing online, like the overwhelming majority of people are really grateful when you share your heart and your story and are careful with it. I feel like there's only a handful of people in this world who are going to be so cruel.
Mm-hmm.
And those aren't your people anyway, you know? You just kind of got to roll with it.
Yeah.
So, I'd say for the most part it's been mostly a really beautiful part of my life to share my heart and my story, and it's been very healing as somebody who is more of a verbal processor, who is a natural teacher. That's my gift that I felt like I wasn't able to use when I was a stay-at-home mom. And so starting my podcast really gave me that avenue to be myself again within my motherhood. And it's been a huge blessing in my life.
Man, thank you so much. Thanks for enlightening us and letting us in there a little bit. I think that there's so many, in particular women, that have that spark inside of them, that have that desire to, maybe they're overstimulated or understimulated by motherhood. Specifically within the ADHD community is where I see this the most. And they don't really know how to access that piece of themselves. And what I've heard today is just the permission. Like, find her. She deserves attention. You're a whole human before you ever are attached to any other person, right? You are a person that deserves some attention. And when we get to know her and she feels fulfilled, she shows up in all of her other roles even better.
Mm-hmm.
If I might just also ask, what does advocacy for yourself look like now, knowing how your brain works, needing this maybe a little bit more flexibility or a little less rigidity? And since your diagnosis, what has shifted, if anything, for you? I mean, you said you talk to yourself more kindly, but anything in your business or how you run your business, or what consistency looks like or whatnot, that maybe some of the multi-passionate entrepreneurs or other people listening to this could glean from as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that just my team knowing that I have ADHD is helpful. And again, there is sort of this, we can joke about it. They'll be like, Rachel's ADHD is showing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I have an integrator that, like, I'm a visionary, and
Mm-hmm.
I have an integrator that's sort of my right-hand woman in my
Excellent.
business, and
So you outsource to that. Yeah.
she is so organized,
Yeah.
and she like has the gentle accountability for me where she'll be like, this really does have to get done. So
Mm-hmm.
like
Awesome.
how can we make it happen this week? But also the ability for me to say, like, I'm in a low right now with my energy, with my focus, with my motivation. I can't meet that deadline. And just to have team members that are either willing to jump in and help me meet that deadline or figure out a way to change it back a little bit, I think has been good. Most of my team members actually have kids with ADHD, and so that's been a blessing that they like get it.
Yeah.
So, the other thing is we try to be really careful about like giving me strategic times to hyperfocus, because I do so well with hyperfocus. And so sometimes we'll say, like, you know, Rachel can't land the plane.
Uh-huh.
Like, I'll be like, I know we're supposed to meet right now, but I can't land the plane. Like, can we just, and they're like, yes, keep going, doing.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Because,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
In
if
the
I
zone.
land the plane, it takes so much energy to get the plane back up in the air.
Right.
Like, and so that is like a little phrase we'll use when I'm like, I can't be interrupted. I can't do anything else. Like, just let me fly the plane, and then
It will
we'll have our
eventually
meeting later,
it will
or
eventually
whatever.
land. Yeah, and
Yeah,
then
it
we'll
will.
come back to it.
And I've tried to be mindful about that in how I set up my schedule. Like, I need days where I can hyperfocus and that I don't have interruption of meetings, or even like my best work time by far is in a hotel room by myself
Yeah,
for a day or two.
I do that too.
And
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that I have a partner that's supportive of that. Like, I'll just be like, I have got to go crush this project.
Uh-huh.
Like, can I please just go away? Because I can work for 12 hours.
Yes, so
like,
can
most
I.
people can't,
no,
but I'm like, give me
1000%.
like, yes.
Yes,
So
1000%. 2, 3, 4 days in a row, even sometimes.
yes.
And
Yes.
especially if I know what we're getting done, that it's weird to me that other people don't experience that. Like, you're gonna do what?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah. I'm putting
Yes.
myself in
Those
a
are the
retreat.
best.
And the retreat is
Yes.
no interruptions and quiet and
Yes.
whatever music I need or background noise to distract the squirrels, and let's do it, right?
Yeah.
It's
And
so rewarding.
I feel like it took time for me to give myself permission to even ask for that.
Bless that
Like
statement.
to even
Yes.
say like, Ryan, I need to go away for a few days, and like,
Yeah.
when can that happen? Not even like, can we make it work, but
Yeah.
we're going to make it work. So when can we
Yes.
make it work? Because that is my best, most creative, most efficient time. So like, I'll try to plan it in once a quarter when I can,
Yeah.
if I have really big work stuff happening. So that's a little tip for any ADHD business women out there.
Well, and that we're not asking for guilt and shame. We're not running away from our family. We're actually running toward getting goals done. And
Mm-hmm.
now we're not going to have as much resentment for being interrupted, for being, what's the word? Just like redirected a million times, and then
Yes.
the crunchiness trying to get back into it. No, if we don't want that resentful mom, and we'll do our best to like keep it under control, but then let me be the professional that needs that space and time. Excellent. I absolutely love that. Well, this has just been so fantastic. We're touching on so many important parts of ADHD experience as a woman, as a mother, as a professional. People, you got to go listen to 3 and 30 if you haven't jumped on that train yet. Please go jump over
Yeah.
there. I just listened to one of the podcasts you did that is something near and dear to my heart, which is the phases of your cycle and how to, and
Mm-hmm.
so when you're talking about
Mm-hmm.
that, when we're in that luteal phase, and our dopamine levels are like, they're
Yeah.
just so bonkers, and, tracking your cycle so that you can be a more successful person as well as more effective entrepreneur. And yeah, man, that in addition to ADHD is just like such an important concept. So will you let us know where we can follow you and find you and what offers you have out there going on right now? That'd be fantastic, Rachel.
So I have anywhere 3 and 30 takeaways for moms, anywhere podcasts are. And I do have a practice that I started when Noah was that colicky baby. I started writing down what I call little flecks of gold, and that this actually comes from a general conference talk Russell Ballard gave back around the time that Noah was a baby, where he talked about a miner in the California gold rush who went west just expecting to strike it rich, like that there was just going to be these big golden nuggets everywhere. And he was so frustrated when he couldn't find any gold. And an elderly prospector told him, you have to look for flecks of gold. It's not going to be these big nuggets. And I heard that conference talk and thought, I have got to start looking for little flecks of gold with my new life, with my motherhood, with my son, with my baby. And I started writing down one tiny little fleck of gold a day. And I was just doing that in like a spiral notebook at that time. But now I've actually created a journal for moms. It's like a lovely, bound, beautiful journal
We
called
love it. We
Flecks
love
of
a good
Gold.
journal over here, ADHDville.
Yeah, I know.
We love
And
it.
I love it because it's like a 1 minute a day practice.
Right.
Like you just, at the end of your day, you just think about what was one, even if the whole day was hard,
Mm-hmm.
like what is one tiny little glimmer of hope that was in this day, or one good moment, and you write it down, and it just sort of retrains your brain that you start to see more of the good as it's happening. And so if there are any moms out there that are in the dark days or just feeling like, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm not good at this, like there's, all of it, all the thoughts that I had in my motherhood, I would recommend that practice. And you can get that journal at 3and30podcast.com/gold. And it's been a really meaningful practice in my life and in my motherhood.
Thank you so much. That sounds fantastic. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate the work that you do and being so transparent and open about your ADHD, your neurodivergence, your life, and even some really personal topics today. So thanks again for being here, Rachel. Best to you, and keep going. This is amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Busy Brain Saint podcast. If you're eager to explore the world of ADHD coaching, make sure to connect with me on Instagram at Camden_ADHD or visit my website, CamdenADHDcoaching.com. For For more LDS-specific ADHD content, don't forget to follow this podcast and join us on Instagram at The Busy Brained Saint. Listen, I'm here to support you on your journey. I cannot wait to have you as a part of our community. Stay engaged, stay inspired, and remember, you're not alone here. Thanks for being a part of the Busy Brained Saint family.